a big push today and tomorrow for an agreement based on increased ambition in mitigation, in finance, in adaptation.
Laura, subnational governments are also coming together to talk action plans. Tell us about that.
Yeah, exactly. There's been a meeting this afternoon for subnational governments. So, of course, here it's Scotland, Ireland and Wales talking together about how those individual nations and smaller areas might be able to come up with plans of their own to try to tackle the climate crisis. Of course, we know that cities are really vital in this. The C40 network, a group of more than 40 cities around the world, chaired by the UK this year, and London's Mayor Sadiq Khan, is really pushing forward on committing to hitting that 1.5-degree target as well. Of course, we know that cities with their urban populations that are increasing, as you said earlier, it's really vital that decisions are made now with town planning, with the way that buildings are constructed to ensure that there's no extra emissions released into the air, and also that things like insulation are installed properly so that any fossil fuels or heating systems that are put in place are not wasteful. And so the emphasis really now is not necessarily on the massive governments and the big pledges made there of cash or huge cuts and commitments that way, but actually on the individual, the smaller and local scale population that can play their part in ensuring that the world can tackle this climate change crisis.
Thanks for that, Laura. That's Laura Megan-Sherwood in Glasgow. Poor countries and vulnerable communities are usually first to suffer the effects of climate change. So what has COP26 done for them? We talk about this later on, World Tonight, with Red Cross Red Crescent Climate Centre Director Martin van Alst.
World leaders have welcomed a surprise agreement between the United States and China to boost climate cooperation. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres called it an important step in the right direction. But there are also calls for concrete action to support the promises made. The world's two largest carbon emitters have unveiled a joint strategy to speed up efforts to combat climate action in this decade. Among the commitments, cutting methane emissions, decarbonization and fighting deforestation. Both sides will also revive a working group and meet regularly to address the climate crisis with a focus on enhancing concrete actions. Washington and Beijing have pledged to work together to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. But as Simon Marks tells us, there's not enough to go on with the agreement for now.
It is thin on specifics. It contains very few data points. There's no indication of the time frame or indeed the precise targets that the two countries through this cooperation are largely aiming to achieve, whether it's in terms of driving down carbonisation, whether it's in terms of cutting those methane emissions or any of the other ideas contained in this document. But it does announce the creation of a working group between the United States and China that it says will meet regularly to discuss ways in which the two countries can work together on the climate change issue. And remember, this announcement came just a matter of days after President Joe Biden himself in Glasgow for the COP26 summit chided China and specifically President Xi for being absent from in-person attendance at the event, indicating that he believed that China was ceding leadership to the issue to the United States. Now, the president must have been aware when he made those comments, and indeed when China reacted to them, that this discussion about cooperation and making this announcement was taking place behind the scenes.
Heavy rain across southern India and Sri Lanka have killed 41 people. Most of the fatalities either drowned or were buried in landslides. The southern Indian city of Chennai has been hit the hardest, with 16 deaths. Non-stop rainfall over the past few days has left many parts of the auto manufacturing hub waterlogged. Schools have been closed, train services disrupted, and flights suspended. Communities have been left stranded, waist-deep in water, prompting government officials to use pumps to drain the area. The downpours are expected to ease in the next few days. Ishan Garg tells us how southern India is dealing with the rising water levels.
The rainfall is still continuing, and the weather department says that it's going to ease in the next 12 to 48 hours. So the real cleanup process and the real assessment of the damage that the flood has left in its wake will only start in about 2 to 3 days. But right now, rescue efforts are continuing. About 11 teams of the National Disaster Response Force have been deployed throughout the state of Tamil Nadu, and 2 other teams have been sent to Pondicherry, which is a union territory close to the state of Tamil Nadu. As for the city of Chennai, the city is really badly hit. About 7 million people live there, and 444 neighborhoods in that city are completely flooded. They are drowning, with several people forced to be out in the streets because their houses are waterlogged. The federal government has promised assistance to the state of Tamil Nadu, and the chief minister has also formed a committee of 5 of his closest officials, one of whom assisted during the tsunami floods as well. So they are hoping that the situation will be brought under control within the next 2 days.
China's Communist Party has formally moved to consolidate the authority and power of President Xi Jinping. An historic resolution, only the 3rd in the country's history, has been passed declaring that the party leadership is a top priority. Mr. Xi is widely expected to secure an unprecedented 3rd term as China's leader.
Senior Chinese leaders have wrapped up a pivotal plenary in Beijing. Like most meetings of China's Communist Party elite, the 4-day meeting has been held behind closed doors. The centerpiece is a historical resolution, reviewing the country's major achievements over the past 100 years. The meeting has upheld the authority of Xi Jinping as the core of the Communist Party, cementing his place in history. The party has only passed 2 such resolutions before, the first endorsing Mao Zedong in 1945, the second Deng Xiaoping in 1981. By moving his own historical resolution, it's speculated that Mr. Xi is setting the stage for an unprecedented 3rd term in power. While there's been no official media coverage of the discussions, state news outlets have been filled with celebrations of Mr. Xi's achievements over the past week. He's been lauded for controlling the pandemic and its economic fallout. But critics say Mr. Xi's tenure has also been marked by a crackdown on dissent in Hong Kong and Xinjiang, as well as an increasingly assertive approach to Taiwan and foreign relations. Just hours after pledging to work with U.S. President Joe Biden, Mr. Xi has warned of a Cold War relapse in the Asia-Pacific.
要坚持向前看，朝前走，反对歧视性、排他性做法。 以意识形态划线，搞地缘政治小圈子，终究是没有前途的。亚太地区不能也不应该回到冷战时期的对立和割裂状态。
Analysts say his remarks appear to be a thinly veiled rebuke to American efforts to strengthen alliances in the region.
Olivia Xiong tells us more about the significance of the resolution.
Well, all eyes will next be on that all-important 20th Party Congress, which we have now received confirmation following this 6th plenum that it will take place in the second half of next year. And President Xi is expected to cement his position and leadership then when he is more than likely to be granted a 3rd 5-year term in power, which is unprecedented. And this comes after the party pressed ahead to remove the presidential term limits back in 2018. And now with this historical resolution that has just been passed at this key party meeting, that provides the justification for President Xi to go ahead with this. And a resolution on history is essentially one of the most important documents in the Communist Party's hierarchy. And that's because it provides an official narrative and a binding judgment on how the history should be viewed.
Still to come, China Evergrande escapes another default. It's the 3rd time in a month. Plus, Belarus threatens to cut off gas supplies to Europe.
Breaking news.
Chanting for Prime Minister
Mr. Prayut Chan-o-cha to step down.
We will be seeing sporadic protests flare up from time and time again.
Key developments.
37.
Of the pandemic, will they emerge stronger from their altered lives? Do young offenders deserve a second chance? Follow the selfless duties of the officers inside the probation service. From trendy to tradition, celebrate the new season of exceptional artistry and architecture in Remarkable Living this November on CMA.
Turning trash into a message.
This time to the artists can change the mindset of the peoples.
Planting to absorb carbon, building a more climate resilient community.
Actually, the baseline of what we're doing is to support the fishermen and the wider community.
Asia's Climate Warriors. Saturday on CNA.
Happy anniversary! Happy anniversary, sayang. Are you excited about today? I am.
I feel guilty because I don't want to hold him back from any other version of happiness he might be able to have.
Pasensya na kayo. Hindi kayo malayo sa kanya.
In business tonight, stumbling from deadline to deadline, cash-strapped developer China Evergrande has once again averted a destabilizing default at the last minute. Several bondholders are said to have received their overdue coupon payments made at the end of a 30-day grace period that ended yesterday. Evergrande shares rose sharply on the news, as did other Chinese developers. The sector gained extra momentum from growing speculation. The authorities are easing up on the sector. Lo Min tells us what we know of the latest on Evergrande.
It's the third time in a month that Evergrande made a very last-minute payment at the end of its 30-day grace period. So it narrowly avoided formal default, which would have been disastrous if it triggered cross-default provisions on its other US dollar bonds. But still, remember, it has $300 billion in liabilities, and there are still outstanding payments, looming deadlines in December with $255 million payments worth of payment deadlines coming up, and it's unclear whether they would be able to pay up, and it's likely that their debt is going to be restructured at some point. The question is when and how. But more urgently, though, investors are now shifting their focus to the second largest borrowers from the international high yields market, and that is another real estate firm called Kaiser, which has two crucial payment deadlines coming up tomorrow. Earlier this week, they have already pleaded with investors for a payment extension after they have failed to make payments on a wealth investment product that they guaranteed. So a lot of anxiety all around, and the question is whether Kaiser will be the next company to face an imminent default.
Singapore's national carrier narrowed its losses in the latest quarter. due to cost-cutting efforts, record cargo revenue, and a hike in passenger numbers from a low base. Net loss for the 3 months to September was 428 million Singapore dollars, down from 2.3 billion Singapore dollars a year ago. SIA says international air travel continues to recover thanks to rising vaccination rates around the world and travel lane arrangements. That's seen revenue double to $1.5 billion, with more people flying and higher loads carried. It says ongoing supply chain disruptions are also driving air freight demand. SIA's monthly operating cash flows have also come close to breaking even. Passenger capacity reaching around 32% of pre-pandemic levels in September. One analyst says that despite the results, he's doubtful that there will be full recovery in the aviation industry by 2023. He says it remains to be seen whether SIA can retain all jobs. Aviation analyst Shuko Yusuf says the outlook remains uncertain, with Singapore's COVID-19 situation under scrutiny from Europe. He says travel trends show that people are still hesitant when it comes to international long-haul flying from Asia. Improving results also from Singapore's biggest telco. Singtel said its first half net profit more than doubled from a year earlier. That's backed by a better showing from its regional associate Airtel and Australian subsidiary Optus. The net profit rose to $954 million, up from $466 million. Group revenue increased by 3% to more than $7 billion. This was driven by strong growth in digital services and data center operations, but operating revenue in Singapore declined as mobile equipment sales fell amid a global chip shortage. Still, it expects its regional business, NCS, to grow by double digits in the next 3 to 5 years.
We are also seeing an improved pace of digitalization, and this will also help our NCS business, which are actually helping businesses to digitalize, to move to the cloud, to transform their systems, to look at different way of doing business. This actually will support NCS push towards digital revenue growth.
Inflation is digging its talons into economies worldwide, causing untold headaches for businesses and for governments. Japanese firms, the latest in the firing line, with figures showing wholesale inflation jumping to its highest level in 4 decades. As with other economies, supply chain bottlenecks and rising commodity costs are squeezing profit margins. Producer prices, which measures the prices companies charge for each other for their goods and services, surged 8% from a year earlier. This was the 8th straight month of producer price inflation and the highest reading since 1980. Meanwhile, wholesale prices rose 38% in October for a range of goods, including fuel. Japanese companies have so far been cautious about passing on higher costs to consumers, but a slim majority say they